It is time to go 3D with our rib cages and other big forms in the figure. What's that, anatomy man? You think you should be the star of today's video? I'm sorry, but we're talking about the simplest underlying forms we can think of, not the full-on anatomy. You're too complicated. You would be perfect as the rib cage shape. You just need to be a bit flatter. So let's just do that. We just flatten you down. Oh!
The heart of all figure drawing comes back to the rib cage and pelvis relationship, and it's so useful to understand that in flat 2D terms like this from the front and this from the side.
But of course the figure is 3D, and creating that sense of 3 dimensions on our flat 2D drawing surface, that's when our artwork is going to come to life.
This is Scott Bretton's 3D ribcage model, but we need to go simpler than this. He thoughtfully provided more simplified versions like this. This is the side of the ribcage, this is the front. Let the ribcage turn 3/4, and now we can see something like this.
Now it's really useful to learn these forms, but let's go simpler.
So something like this could be good, but we need simpler. Now we're really just throwing down rough egg shapes. They're doable while capturing what we need. The side view egg is a little bit flatter, the front view a little wider, 3/4 is a little bit between the two. And the center line really helps us see what angle we're viewing the egg from. How far is it from the edge? If we're mostly looking at the ribcage from the side, then the center line is going to be really close to the edge, and we only see a narrow bit of the far side. If the ribcage is more turned towards us, we're going to see more of the far side. The center line is going to come closer to the middle.
So this might all seem overly simplistic, but there's this general principle I'm realizing in art, which is it is way more useful to get really good at really simple ideas than it is to get knowledgeable about more sophisticated and fancy ideas. So let's get really good with this ribcage egg idea before we start worrying about the actual complex ribcage anatomy.
So when we look at this pose, we can visualize that ribcage egg in a very similar way to when we were thinking 2D. But now we will also look for the center line and how much of the far side we can see.
So you anatomy purists who already hate me by this point, you're going to hate me even more, because if you remember, we thought about the pelvis area from the front and the side as this like underpants shape.
Well, we're going 3D pants now, guys. So instead of being flat along the top, we're probably going to see the opening at the top. And that's because usually we're looking down on the pelvis, and also it's often tilted forward, so we'll often see that opening at the top of the pelvis. So here's the 3/4 view, but you know what, we probably don't need to worry about the leg openings that we wouldn't see because of the legs, so we'll simplify back to this. But we will keep the whole of the opening around the top of the pelvis pants, even though we can't see all of that. It's just too useful. It's too useful to visualize that. So again, we're now going to be able to see the center line and some of the far side because it's a 3/4 view.
My favorite anatomy book by Valerie Winslow. Miss Winslow, what do you think about the pelvis pants idea? Oh, it's okay. Oh, cool. Oh, but just don't call it pelvis pants, because it's not the bony structure of the pelvis that this shape represents. It's also the muscle and the fat. It's more the outer surface shape that's being captured by this pants shape. So it's fine, just don't call it pelvis pants. Okay, I understand. But the thing is, the shape, the pants shape, the orientation of it, the tilt of it, the angle of it is still based on whatever the actual pelvis is doing. So I'm still going to call it the pelvis pants. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
So just as with the 2D model, we're looking for the relationship between the ribcage and the pelvis. From the side, we were interested in the tilt of the ribcage versus the pelvis. In this case, the ribcage tilted back and the pelvis tilted forward. And that created a squash side and a stretch side. So it's still the same here from the 3/4 view, but now we have that center line and we can see some of the far side of the egg.
So we saw that the shoulders can pivot up and down, and in the side view, we saw that they can pull forward or pull back. Now, when the arm is down, even in these like 3/4 views and stuff, we can probably still just use a straight line to kind of roughly map out where has the shoulder pivoted to.
So when the arms are down, we're still just going to use the two straight lines. We aren't even really going to add form to them. We're just going to put down a line that goes from the middle of the collarbones, runs along to the top of the shoulder. That kind of falls apart when the arm is raised, in this 3D view. So the truth is the collarbone isn't really a straight line. It kind of goes back in space. And when the arm is raised, things rotate around so that there's muscle and armpit in front of the collarbone, and it gets buried behind stuff. So when the arm is raised, we're going to use the shapes created by the muscles to help us attach the arm to the rib cage, just because they are visible and now the collarbone's not really visible. And we're just trying to keep things easy here. So we're going to see that kind of abstract shape. The pec often merges with the deltoid to create a shape like this. We're going to see that, add it to our rib cage, and then allow the arm to emerge from underneath it. But we're still going to keep in mind what we've learned about how the shoulder can pivot up and down.
30-second explanation of what Fresh Eyes is. It's a 10-day figure drawing challenge. We started off thinking in 2D, now we're moving into 3D in the second half of it. There's tutorials, there's live sessions, there's community. You can still start it now, it doesn't matter when you start. There's references to practice with every day. It's free. What else? It's awesome. Check out the link below and come and join us and have fun. 5 seconds left.
So the head is reasonably straightforward because we already have a ball shape and we're just going to add a center line to it. So kind of a line roughly along the middle of the face. So we can see the angle that we're looking at the ball from. We can think, can we see more of the left-hand side or the right-hand side? It's also useful to add the brow line so we can see if they're looking up or down. So the twisting in the lower half of the torso is going to come from the rib cage being rotated different to the pelvis. The rib cage is facing this way, the pelvis is facing that way, and it creates a twist. But it's really the big rigid rib cage, it's a tongue twister. But it's really the big rigid rib cage mass facing one way and the big rigid pelvis mass facing the other way. And the midsection again just has to be flexible to try and accommodate the two. In the upper torso, the twist is all about the shoulders versus the rib cage. So if one shoulder is pulled back and the other forward, it'll create a twisting feeling. And a lot of these muscles, like the pecs, are going from the rib cage to the upper arms via the shoulders, and they have to stretch and curve around and just try to go from one to the other. And that stretching and squashing gives that feeling of a twist. So the twist goes 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the pelvis, then the rib cage, then the shoulders and the head. It's not this one big flexible blob like a blob of rubber and it's twisting. All the soft stuff in the midsection and the muscles of the upper torso, they might make it feel that way, but it's really these big rigid bony masses rotated in different ways, and then the squashy stuff trying to accommodate the different rotations. So for limbs, foreshortened limbs, the question is which end is closer to our eyes? So here it's this end. The surface lines will curve away from this end. So here it's at this end, and the surface lines will curve away from that end. And when that end that's closer is much closer to our eyes than the other end, in other words, it's really foreshortened like this, the curves are going to be really deep, right? We're going to see a lot of that ellipse running around the form. When both ends are a similar distance to our eyes, so it's just a bit foreshortened, the curves are going to be quite shallow. Sometimes the form is really quite flat to our eyes and it's hard to tell which end is closer. And in that case, maybe you can just draw it as a pretty much 2D shape and not try and add cross-contour lines. So with the thighs and the arms, we're going to feel those forms coming towards us a bit like cylinders. We're going to add these cross contours or surface lines, or also known as wrapping lines, to help us understand how they're coming towards us. We can add surface lines on the sort of rib cage area too. So as we saw from the side view, the rib cage is often tilted back. And often in a standing pose, that means the top is going to be a little bit further from our eyes than the bottom. And the surface lines that wrap around the rib cage can curve that way as well. With the pelvis, it's often tilted forward, and we're often looking down on it. So the top of it is going to be closer to our eyes than the bottom, and that curve is going to run like this. And so the most important thing is the top opening. And because the pelvis is very often tilted forward, we're going to draw this opening of the pelvis pants with the top being higher than the back, so it's tilting forwards. So all these forms can be on different angles, and they might be tilted forward and the other one tilted back. and they might be rotated differently, creating a twist.
So if you can't capture all of that with beautiful expressive marks within 2 minutes, that is understandable. These things are not magically in our heads. There's no such thing as you're born with this talent. These are skills that you learn step by step. And so for days 6 to 10 of this challenge, we're going to slowly build up those skills. So check out these before and after drawings. This is across 6 weeks with one of our former students, Danielle. This is what's possible when you have a structured sequence of exercises designed to build these skills brick by brick. Just a little bit of promo for the course. It is really, really powerful, and we're opening it up for enrollment quite soon, so keep an eye out for that. It hasn't been open for enrollment for like 6 months, so jump on the opportunity if you get the chance. But the bigger point is that it is totally doable to build your skills as long as you give yourself that time and go through a good structured sequence of exercises. Okay, so if you want to practice these ideas, check out the link below and sign up for the free Fresh Eyes Challenge. We're in day 6 of it with this tutorial, but you can start from day 1, that's fine. You can start whenever you like and take your time to work through it. So have a lot of fun, and I'll see you in the next one.